Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. First, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. We have merch in the store and channel membership / Patreon that gets you exclusive content and other goodies. If you could give this video a like and a comment with your thoughts down below, that would be so appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click that red button because I make more content like this, and hit the little bell icon so that you get notified when I post because I'm bad at keeping a schedule. Today, we have more real-life cases that TV shows adopted for the small screens. Let's get into it. Number 1, CSI Season 4, Episode 8, After the Show. I have to be honest, I love watching these old CSI episodes. A lot of the episodes use real-life crimes as inspiration, and they stay really close to what had happened in real life, making the show so much more realistic. In this episode, we start off with an intoxicated man who called the police and said, "I never meant to hurt her."
President, what is your emergency?
I never meant to hurt her.
Sir?
SWAT goes to the house, arrests the man, and it is discovered that the man may have a connection to a missing model named Julie Waters. His home was littered with newspaper articles about Julie's disappearance, as well as photography equipment. The man, Howard Delholme, is a creepy freelance photographer. Delholme is linked to Julie by a car rental receipt found in a trash can containing several items belonging to Julie, including a stack of headshots. Delholme admitted to knowing Julie, and he had taken her out to the desert to take photos, but during the shoot there was an accident. He lost control of the rental car and accidentally hit Julie, killing her. He then led detectives on several wild goose chases through the desert. Catherine recognizes a particular mountain range in Delholme's photos of the car, and they find Julie's body. Evidence showed that Julie had been strangled and had no injuries consistent by being hit by a vehicle. The episode concluded by saying that Delholme had killed Julie because she had rejected his advances and he couldn't handle it. This episode was very closely based on the 1995 murder of aspiring actress Linda Sobek. 27-year-old Linda had gone missing on November 16th from Los Angeles, California. Linda was a former cheerleader for the LA Raiders and was on an upward trajectory to success. Her calendar was packed with numerous modeling gigs, and that evening she had a meeting for a role on the TV show Married with Children. Linda had always wanted to be an actress, and cheerleading and modeling was just a way to get there. The morning of her disappearance, Linda called her mom and left a message as she was walking out the door. Linda said that she was heading out for a last-minute shoot and that she would call her later that evening. Linda normally had a strict protocol for shoots. She would normally tell her roommates and her mom where she was going and who the photographer was, but on this particular day, she didn't. Later that afternoon, Linda also had an important meeting with producers from Married with Children. Linda wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, and she never would have missed that meeting with the Married with Children producers. Her mother, Elaine, began to worry when Linda failed to call her that evening. The next morning, one of Linda's roommates called her and told her that Linda hadn't been home yet, and concern grew to dread. Her mother reported her missing, and friends and family began to distribute missing flyers with the $20,000 reward for any information. 2 days later, a park maintenance worker at the Angeles National Forest was emptying garbage cans when he found a handful of photos of a beautiful blonde woman, along with a page ripped from an appointment book. He took the photos, putting them in his backpack, and forgot about them. It wasn't until a few days later, while watching the news, that he recognized a missing local woman. He called the police, and officers were able to narrow their investigation. More of Linda's personal items were found in garbage cans at the park. Lease paperwork for her vehicle, a set of hair curlers, and a cosmetic bag. All would have been items that she would have brought with her to a shoot. Officers also recovered her vehicle nearly a week after her disappearance. The car was found at a Denny's parking lot covered in dust, but otherwise completely undisturbed, an hour away from the Angeles National Forest in Torrance, LA. Angeles National Forest is a popular hiking area with over 1,000 square miles of mountainous terrain.
Among the items found in the trash bin in Angeles National Forest, along with Linda's photographs and date book, was a rental agreement for a Lexus sports utility vehicle. The name on the document was Charles Rathbun.
About a week after Linda's disappearance, police were attending an incident involving an intoxicated man at his home. The man was upset and had turned the gun on himself at one point. The gun was accidentally fired within the home, and the bullet ricocheted off a wall and injured a deputy's arm. Officers were able to get the gun away from the man and arrested him and took him into custody. The man was 38-year-old Charles Rathbun, a local photographer, and while in custody he admitted to being the photographer that Linda had met with the morning of her disappearance. Initially, he said that he had no idea what had happened to her. He said that they had met that morning, discussed having new headshots taken, and then the two went their separate ways. Among the photographs of Linda that had been recovered, there had also been a lease agreement with Rathbun's name on it for the rental car that he had a contract to shoot. Rathbun had tried to say that the lease must have gotten mixed in with the photos at the meeting, but when he was informed that the police had seized that rental and in it they found blood and saliva, his story changed, and he admitted to hiring Linda to model with the car. He said that there had been an accident during the shoot. He had been showing Linda how to drive donuts in a vehicle when he lost control of the vehicle and hit her. He then said he put her body in the back of the rental car and buried her body in the Angeles National Forest. He agreed to lead investigators to her body. At first, he had been vague and uncooperative. He kept leading them to random locations, but 8 days later, he finally led them to the correct location.
It is the Sobek family home in Lakewood. It is quiet tonight, but inside a family is fighting mad. They're angry at the coroner's office revealing autopsy results that cast a chilling new light on the death of model Linda Sobek. Results that seem to destroy the story of this man, Charlie Rathbun. All along, he's claimed that Sobek's death was a horrible accident. But today, the coroner confirmed it was no accident. It was a homicide and it was a sexual assault.
Linda had been found buried in a shallow grave only 2 feet deep. The cold November evenings had preserved a lot of the evidence that investigators needed for a conviction. A female crime scene investigator noticed that she wasn't wearing any makeup and that the shirt she'd been wearing was zipped all the way up to the neck, leading her to believe that Linda had been washed of her makeup and redressed before she had been buried. Her autopsy revealed that she had suffocated and she had no injuries consistent with being hit by a vehicle. She was covered in defensive bruising. She had fought like hell against her attacker. There was also severe bruising which suggested she had been assaulted with a foreign object. Officers were able to uncover that Charles Rathbun had known Linda prior to hiring her. The two had met at a car convention and Rathbun had gotten Linda's phone number in order to book her for future shoots. Rathbun also had a history of violence towards women. He had been fired previously because he had sexually harassed female employees. He also had been accused of sexual assault in 1979, but the charges had been acquitted. He had lured a young woman to his home, promising to launch her into modeling stardom. The young woman had been married and had not consented to having sex with Rathbun. She screamed and fought, but when Rathbun threatened to kill her, she stopped resisting and the judge deemed the encounter consensual. People who had worked with Rathbun said that he could be very charming, but he was prone to outbursts of rage and was known to have violent outbursts on shoots. In the LA area, he had such a bad reputation that most agencies wouldn't work with him anymore. His friends revealed that he had a particular dislike for blondes, but no one knew why. Officers searched Rathbun's home, which revealed a large gun collection. One such gun was a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. The gun revealed presence of blood, and the DNA left behind matched Linda. Charles Rathbun pleaded not guilty and went to trial in 1996. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. He currently resides at the California Institute for Men and is 63 years old. He is currently being investigated for other murders in areas where he used to reside in Ohio, Michigan, and California. Number 2, CSI Season 6, Episode 4, Shooting Stars. This episode starts off with a homeowner finding a body in his backyard. When Grissom and the team arrive, Grissom makes a comment about a meteor shower.
The Orionid meteor shower. You never get a view like this in town.
The following day, Grissom and Catherine discover an underground bunker in the middle of the desert. In the bunker, they find 11 recently deceased young people. They all had an empty bottle next to them, and it appeared that they had been poisoned. They discovered that the group were all members of a cult. They had been convinced that their bodies were shells that needed to be shed in order to get to a higher plane of existence. The crew finds out that the leader was actually running a scheme, preying on college-age kids, indoctrinating them, taking advantage of them, and then getting those kids to ask their parents to send them money. He would then give them a sedative and move on to another state to start a new group. The show itself references comparison to the Heaven's Gate cult. Heaven's Gate was a religious cult that took major components of Christianity and blended them with extraterrestrial mythology. Founded in 1974, its leader, Bonnie Nettles, and Marshall Applewhite alleged that they were aliens in human forms. Applewhite and Nettles were both highly religious before forming their own religion. They often compared themselves to Jesus and said that they would shed their earthly bodies and an alien mothership would bring them home. They preyed on individuals that didn't fit into society. Applewhite was a charismatic leader, while Bonnie kept everything in order. Applewhite could sell a story, telling potential members that if they didn't fit in or couldn't conform to societal norms, it wasn't their fault, and it was because they had an alien inside them, and they needed to find each other by standing out, and that's why they never fit in. The group would travel on buses and camp in state parks in California and Nevada, and they would publish advertisements in newspapers and hold meetings, encouraging members to leave everything behind and shed their human nature for physical intimacy, money, and possessions. By 1976, the group had put down roots and began renting a 92,000 square foot mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. The group started to transform from a ragtag nomadic group to a strict religious monastery. They began to practice strict purification behavior modifications. No sex, drugs, or other distasteful human weaknesses. They discouraged unique identities and would sport similar haircuts, glasses, and outfits. In 1997, it was decided that it was time to go. Applewhite convinced his followers that an alien ship was following the Hale-Bopp comet. It only orbited Earth every 2,000 years, and it was a sign that they were looking for. On March 20th, 1997, Applewhite recorded a tape explaining the group's mass evacuation of Earth. The tapes were duplicated and sent out to members that had previously left to tell them that they had left without them. Starting on the 22nd of March, groups of 15 would consume spiked applesauce or pudding containing phenobarbital, followed up with vodka and then covering their heads with plastic bags. The members would suffocate, all dressed in matching sweatsuits, Nike Decades athletic shoes, and armbands that read, Heaven's Gate Away Team. The uniform was said to represent unity. There was a lot of speculation about the Nike shoes, but it turns out that Applewhite just really liked Nike, and so everyone else was expected to like Nike, and they got a good deal. When one group died, the remaining members would arrange the bodies, remove the bags, and place a purple cloth over the deceased member's face. Once that was completed, the next group would do the same thing. Applewhite was determined to have been one of the last groups, but not one of the last members. His body was found like the rest, no bag and with a purple cloth draped over him. The last members were found unposed with bags over their heads still. A total of 39 members were found on March 26th. A former member received one of the tapes and asked officers to do a wellness check at the mansion. Following the deaths, a few former members would take their own lives in an attempt to join the other members in a higher existence. Number 3. Law & Order SVU Season 1, Episode 7, Uncivilized. In this episode, the body of an 8-year-old boy is discovered in a park.
What do we got? Kid was assaulted, strangled, left in a shallow grave.
Although it seems that the evidence points to a man on the sex offenders list, it turns out to have been the work of 2 young men. One of the men, Mike, seemed like he was just going along with his friend Jimmy's plans, and he seemed remorseful. Jimmy, who had orchestrated the abduction and murder, showed no remorse. This episode was based on the bizarre 1924 abduction and murder of Bobby Franks in Chicago, Illinois. On May 21, 1924, 14-year-old Bobby Franks went missing while walking home from school. The son of a wealthy watch manufacturer, the Franks were well known and highly respected in the community. The evening of his abduction, Bobby's parents received a phone call from a man who called himself George Johnson and informed them that their son had been abducted but was safe, and he would give him back for a $10,000 ransom. The man said the ransom instructions would arrive shortly. The following morning, a letter detailing instructions arrived in the mail. The instructions were meticulous and lengthy, but the family was willing to comply to get their son back. The family had barely gotten through the first set of instructions. The instructions were an elaborate scavenger hunt to retrieve pieces of a location to drop off the ransom money, and they were barely through the first set of instructions when they received word that Bobby's body had been found. The ransomers had lied and had never had any intention of exchanging Bobby for the ransom money. His body had been found the following morning 25 miles from Chicago in Hammond, Indiana, inside a culvert along the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks. His body was naked and the killer had poured acid on him in an attempt to conceal his identity. Because of the shocking nature of the crime, as well as the Franks' wealth and power, an intense investigation began. In addition to the full attention of the Chicago Police Department, a large reward was offered for any information. At the crime scene, there was little evidence, however a pair of glasses was recovered near the body. The glasses were an average prescription and frame, but they had a unique hinge. This particular hinge had only been sold to 3 customers in the Chicago area. One was a man that had been out of town for several weeks, another was a woman who was quickly determined to not have been involved, and the third was a 19-year-old man who had already been questioned. Nathan Leopold was picked up for questioning, though he seemed like an unlikely suspect. Leopold also came from a wealthy family. He was already a graduate of the University of Chicago, and he'd grown up in the affluent Kenwood neighborhood. Though it seemed unlikely that such a young man was involved in the grisly slaying, he was brought in and held for questioning for over 24 hours. Leopold offered an explanation as to why his glasses may have been found near the scene. He was an accomplished ornithologist, a branch of zoologists that specializes in identifying bird species. He had national recognition in the field and was conducting research in the area about Kirtland warblers, a threatened species. He said that he had been in the area recently on a research expedition and had lost his glasses in the area. Though a seemingly reasonable explanation, officers felt that there was something off about the young man. Officers asked about Leopold's whereabouts on the night in question, and he had said that he'd been with his friend Richard Loeb. He alleged that the two had been together that evening. He said that they'd been drinking, and that afternoon they had picked up a couple of women. The 4 drove to a remote area where the men attempted to have relations with the woman, who refused them. After that, they dropped them off and went home. During Leopold's investigation, officers ransacked his bedroom at his parents' home. There they uncovered a letter addressed to Richard Loeb, and it implied that the young man had a more intimate relationship. It called into question their activities on May 21st, and Richard Loeb was brought in for questioning. Richard Loeb was also the son of a wealthy Chicago family. His father was a well-respected lawyer and had been the vice president for Sears. Like Leopold, he was highly intelligent and excelled academically. He had skipped several grades of high school, graduating at 14, and had become the University of Michigan's youngest graduate at 17. Loeb was a year younger than Leopold, and though they had grown up in the same neighborhood, they didn't become friends until university. During questioning, the young men were separated, and more cracks began to form in their stories. Initially, Loeb had corroborated Leopold's story. Their parents had been so confident that their sons hadn't been involved in the crime that they allowed them to stay in police custody while the two were being investigated. Police determined that the handwriting on the envelope matched Leopold's, and the ransom note had been written on a typewriter that he owned. When police took that information to Richard Loeb, he broke, giving police details that hadn't been released to the press, and only the murderer would have known. Loeb blamed everything on Leopold, and when Leopold realized that his friend was trying to pin the murder on him, he then confessed and blamed everything on Loeb. Their confessions revealed that they had planned a murder for months. Both were obsessed with crime, murder mystery novels, and the act of murder. They were convinced that they could commit the perfect crime. Once they were caught, they were very forthcoming about what had happened to Bobby. They said that they had rented a car under a fake name and typed up the ransom note before they even had a victim. The two drove around their neighborhood searching for a wealthy child. They saw Bobby Franks walking home, and Bobby was the cousin of Richard Loeb, and the two were able to persuade Bobby into the vehicle. Once Bobby was in the car, he was murdered. He had been bludgeoned several times with the back of a chisel and then suffocated with a rag. They had then hidden Bobby in the vehicle and drove him out of Chicago to a location they had already decided upon. The men retraced their steps with law enforcement and with reporters, and even walked them through the steps. They seemed almost proud of what they had accomplished, or were looking at it like a failed science experiment that needed to be studied. Though when it was realized that the prosecutors would be going for the death penalty, the men changed their tone immediately. No one could understand why they had done this. They had been 2 wealthy young men, academically brilliant, and seemingly had their whole lives ahead of them. During their trial, it was revealed that they had grandiose beliefs that they were superhumans, brought together by fate. It was revealed that Leopold had been in love with Loeb, and Loeb would exchange intimate relations with Leopold if he agreed to go along and carry out various petty crimes. They had started with thefts, vandalism, and destruction of property, but it was never enough for Loeb. They said that they enjoyed the thrill of getting away with smaller crimes, and had felt that the thrill of getting away with murder would give them some sort of permanent elation. Leopold expressed disappointment that they felt the same afterward, and that they weren't exceptional after all. The judge sentenced them both to life sentences. The two maintained their friendship while in prison. Richard Loeb died in prison. He had been attacked by another inmate. Nathan Leopold was released in 1958 and moved to Puerto Rico. He died in 1971 at the age of 66 from a heart attack.
Leopold and Loeb would never again dominate headlines, but the perpetrators of the perfect crime would continue to compel fascination for decades to come.
I think this case has a continuous hold on our imaginations because of the way it interrogates the idea of evil and whether or not there really is such a thing.
Well, that'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out until the end. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership and Patreon to get early access, members-only content, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box and links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.